Really looking forward to everybody joining us here for this particular webinar and around best practices around social selling. We are going to bring tactical best practices here on how to integrate social selling within your existing sales process. And Mike, from PeopleLinks, I want you to introduce yourself. You've been an incredible thought leader in the space around social selling. Give everybody in the audience, some came from our database, some came from yours. Give everybody a sense as to who you are and what PeopleLinks is all about.
Awesome, thanks, Jamie. It's wonderful to be with you today, and thank you everyone for dialing in. The short answer is I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at PeopleLinks. We have a social selling platform that guides sales reps and other professionals on the most effective actions for them to take to source and nurture and ultimately close deals using social as well as other engagement channels. That's sort of what we do. We've had a lot of success with very large companies, Fortune 500, Big Four accounting firms, AmLaw 100, etc. And my own background is that I'm a veteran of the social business world. I actually started my career at McKinsey & Company, the consulting firm, where I was responsible for knowledge technology worldwide, launched some of the world's first enterprise-wide deployments of social technology within a large company, and was so excited by what I was seeing that I went off to focus on social full-time. And PeopleLinks is now my second social technology company. Previously, I was a company called Social Text, which is one of the first enterprise collaboration software vendors. Anyway, it was a long answer to a short question, but that's me, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Fantastic. My name is Jamie Shanks. I'm the CEO of Sales for Life. Long of the short, we built the world's largest curriculum on the topic of social selling for both enablement, marketing, and sales professionals, used by over 60,000 professionals today. So let's just jump right into it. Basically, here's the roadmap for today. Today's roadmap is we're going to talk about social selling effectiveness, how to do this properly and why, the buyer's journey, getting beyond the first step, which PeopleLinks is properly at random access social. Then we're going to talk about real best practices, getting into the behavioral change and support mechanism, and then finally questions. I see that there might be a few questions in the chat box. Let's save them for the end. And Mike, you and I will definitely rack through those particular questions. Let's talk about the first piece. How are we going to be effective and why are we here? This is an interesting statistic, and it's from Forbes, so it's got to be right. 78% of sales professionals, just like myself, are using social media to outperform our peers. So, and here's the thing, everybody. All you have to do is a simple Google search. And it's unbelievable that in 2015 we're still talking about the why. But if you were looking at the demand curve of social selling, we haven't even left the runway yet of its infancy. Mike, anything you can expand beyond that on why are we here?
Well, I would agree with what you said. I mean, we are, it is still very early days, but the evidence is clear, and I think becoming clearer every day, that social is an engagement channel that works. It's new and it's fresh, and it's a place where you can still interact with people in kind of genuine and authentic ways. And salespeople need to integrate it as one more channel that they can use to interact with buyers. And that's the name of the game. It's not separate from the buying process. It's just another channel that you can use to reinforce all the good behaviors, all the effective practices that you're already doing.
I love it because you're using the term additive. And as we deal with sales enablement leaders all the time, one of their biggest fears is, listen, I already have a sales methodology. It works. It's proven in our company. I said, listen, you're not ripping out your sales methodology. This is an additive process that you interweave within your sales methodology, and any great social selling program needs to be agnostic to the way that you sell today. It's just another arrow in the quiver. So fantastic. Let's jump right into the second piece, the buyer's journey. And you know what's interesting? This is one of the big first language steps that your organization needs to make, and it's not a sales process, it's the buyer's journey. And our role in sales and marketing, or I just call it the revenue team, is to facilitate that buying journey. Mike, bring us home here through some of these statistics, and which ones are most important to you?
Well, I think they're probably all important because what they really do is they tell a consistent story, right? You start with the CEB data. 57% of the buying journey is done before a sales rep is involved. What that means is that more and more buyers are self-educating. They're not reaching out to sales teams to get their information about products, about features, about differentiation, about best practices. Those are things people used to pick up the phone and call a sales rep to learn. They don't need to do that anymore. They're doing it online. And that's why they're using social media, the second stat, IDC. And that's why when they do start to reach out, it's the ones they get to first who are able to shape the conversation.
100% agree with you that I'm a believer. Just think of it in your own personal context of your own life. The reality is when somebody is there that teaches you something new, 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, when you need a solution pertaining to that particular problem, who's the first person you're going to call? You're going to call the person that in your memory seems to know the most about that particular subject. And that is the real opportunity. This corporate vision statistic, and they did this in conjunction with Forrester's, 3/4 of deals are awarded to you as a sales professional because you taught somebody something new. You provided insights that they didn't know. And this is the real challenge here, because if you're not willing to educate, I guarantee no matter what industry you're in, whether it's today or tomorrow, there will be competitors that have decided, I am going to open up our intellectual property, I'm going to showcase all the things we know and provide it in digital formats online for customers, and they're going to learn through your competitors. So I guess it comes down to what is the first step. If 3/4 of deals are awarded to people that provide insights up front, Mike, where would you probably start the process?
Well, boy, there are lots of different points to start it at, but I like the one that you've got here, which is starting with your presence on LinkedIn. It's your personal brand. It's your digital calling card. And so when you have a LinkedIn profile presence that's really all about educating the buyer, delivering value to the buyer, not about advertising yourself, not about getting your next sales gig, but helping the buyer, that becomes the anchor for everything else that you're going to do online.
Yeah, and I'll add to this, just as a quick aside. So we monitor the content consumption of every one of our prospective buyers. We're watching the digital fingerprints, essentially. And so as we use HubSpot Sidekick and we use ClearSlide. If you marry that data, just in the last 24 hours, I happened to be on the couch watching Homeland Season 4 with my wife last night, and I kind of had this running in the background. It is unbelievable to see the correlation between companies and buyers that are on our website checking out pages. And then also, when I go into LinkedIn, I'm seeing who's viewed my profile. It's the same people. Like it's actually unbelievable to realize that the first place that they're going to do due diligence on myself and our company, and if, as I am a form of a sales professional, that they're doing it here on my LinkedIn profile. And then, Mike, elaborate now on leveraging connections. What does that all mean?
Yeah, so what that means is, LinkedIn, like a lot of social networks, has the ability to not only show you who you're connected with, but also to show you who those people are connected with. And the value of that is that it allows you, especially if you're engaged in any sort of named account buying or named account selling, it allows you to ask for warm introductions. The warm introductions could come from colleagues within your company. They could come from people who don't work for the same company as you, but are people you know well enough that you could say, hey, I'm trying to get a meeting with Jamie Shanks. I see that, I'm not directly connected to Jamie, but I see that you are. Would you mind doing a warm introduction?
Yeah.
And as we know, as every salesperson knows, warm introductions are always better than a cold call. They're always going to get a level of traction and uptake that's an order of magnitude larger than if you're just going in cold.
And in fact, Sales Benchmark Index has statistics on it that you are 4.2 times more likely to open up that door because of somebody in your network. Like this is that trust factor as combined the two of you. than it is if you just went in there cold. And there's a variety of different tactics you can use, and you can see at the top of the screen it says sphere of influence. That could be leveraging people. If the center of your sphere of influence was a customer success story, well, you could leverage people that used to work at that company. You could leverage people that compete with that company. You could be monitoring people within your college or university alumni. I mean, these are all leveraging a sphere of influence of connections. And then another tactical example of just getting started with social selling here. Mike, talk to us a little bit about interacting one-on-one with customers and prospects, but more in a tactical example. I think people understand the why, but give us some juicy tips here on just getting started with this.
Absolutely. I really like this one because I think a lot of people have the idea that social selling is all about prospecting. It's all about using LinkedIn to find buyers who fit your ideal target profile. And of course, that's one of the ways to use social selling, and it's very effective, but it's not the only way. So once you've identified a buyer, and maybe you're already starting to engage in a sales cycle, maybe you've done the discovery, maybe you've done an initial needs assessment, you've had a conversation or two, the ball is really starting to roll with the opportunity. At that point, one of the most effective ways to use social selling is to do things like connect to the buyer on LinkedIn, follow the buyer on Twitter, and then actually follow up. Start to pay attention to what they're doing. So if you've got a buyer who's tweeting, you got a buyer who's posting articles on LinkedIn, or maybe even writing their own blog posts on LinkedIn, interacting with that content, favoriting it, replying to it, retweeting it, that is, number one, extremely flattering to the prospect, and number two, it gives you an in. It gives you a way to stay top of mind with the prospect, and also it gives you an opportunity then to pick up the phone or fire off the email and say, hey, love that latest tweet, or really enjoyed the exchange that we just had on Twitter. Just wanted to check in and talk more about your need or the opportunity that we've been talking about, or whatever it is. So it's another channel for engaging one-to-one with specific individuals that you're trying to influence and interact with.
I've always loved, and this is a tip for anybody who's in enablement or operations, but are looking for tips for your inside sales team or your SDRs, your sales development reps. As we all know, that there's a lot of voicemails, there's a lot of touch points that an SDR does, and you're always looking for increased throughput or yield on your touch points. And one of them is leveraging the combination of Twitter to LinkedIn as a calls to action. So as a best practice, as you know, you would always leave a voicemail that drives a call to action to check out an email. I mean, that was the days of my inside sales days. But this in the social world, because Twitter typically is tied to people's mobile devices, and because Twitter is also the kind of application that kind of chimes people's phones or vibrates people's phones, I've always loved using Twitter as a call to action to drive to a LinkedIn message or an email. So I might write, Mike, fantastic article, just sent you an email on X, Y, and Z, or just left you a voicemail. And I drive them to check out the call to action on the email, where I can further elaborate my message, or on LinkedIn where I can further elaborate my message. I love using them almost like the voicemail email combo of the 20th century. This is my combo for the 21st century. Now, let's kind of take a step back here for a second, Mike, and discuss beyond random acts of social. This is now for anyone that's on the call that's a leader that needs to really think about, where do we stand in the pecking order of social selling benchmarking? I mean, this gets asked to me at every conference that I speak at. Where does my organization stand against our competitors? So, yep. Can you break down these statistics for us?
Sure. So these are statistics that come from a major survey and a report that we did right at the beginning of this year. And what we discovered was that when you poll B2B salespeople about the value of social selling, they get it. So 73% see the value, but only 31% say that it's part of their selling process. Now, more than 31% are and Twitter and Facebook. So it's not as though they're not on social networks. The thing is that only 31% say it's part of the process. And that's really, as a sales manager, as a sales leader, that's where you want to get to. You want to get to a point where your sales team is using these channels as part of their process, because that's where the scale comes from, that's where the repeatability is, that's where the measurability is, and ultimately, sustained sales execution comes down to repeatable process.
I couldn't agree more with behavioral change. And actually, I've always found that behavioral change is that leading indicator. If you're going to measure, leading, current, and lagging indicators, before you're ever going to get sales results, you need to change the way that people learn, and you need to measure that learned behavior as a form of, and watch those, behavioral learnings turn into actions. Now, this statistic, can you elaborate here on this particular statistic on what you found also with sales professionals?
Yeah, so I'm glad you bring up learning, because what we discovered was this is really a knowledge issue. You look at those numbers that I just talked about and you say, well, if they see the value, why are they not integrating this into their process? And the answer is they don't know what to do. So when we asked them straight up, do you feel you know how to use social for selling, only 26% said that they did. Right? And even of those 26%, we don't even know, how many of them really do. We just know that we got 74% out there who sort of throwing up their hands saying, look, I admit I don't even know what to do.
And this comes to the theme of this section, which is random acts of social, because in any organization, and actually if you kind of look almost like a Pareto's curve kind of thing, but you typically have 15% of your team that are rock stars that have just figured this out. You have 15% that are laggards that just have no interest. And you have 70%, which are your core performers. But unfortunately, those core performers, which are the ones that move the needle for you, haven't yet figured out a pragmatic process or a prescriptive process.
Yep, exactly right.
So elaborate here now on that company support, because at the end of the day, if we know that it's random acts of social, and if you want to increase the throughput of the entire org, it's not on the individual reps to learn in an individual silo.
Exactly right. And what we discovered in our research is that by and large, companies, so sales leadership, marketing leadership, sales enablement, are really not doing a whole lot to help sales teams use social selling and integrate it into their sales process. So as you can see from the numbers, only 22% of sales reps told us that their companies encourage the use of social selling. Only 11% said that the company offers training, and only 6% said that the company measures the results of social selling. Right? So now, all of this is from the perspective of the salesperson, the sales rep. If you talk to people in sales training, people in sales enablement, you might see a different set of numbers, but this is the perception that's out there.
And so the question then lies, if you were to dissect these numbers further, do you think that it's an age and demographic issue at the leadership level? Is it a lack of empirical evidence of success of social selling? Where do you think is the indicator as to why there isn't that total encouragement at the top? Because the total encouragement then trickles down to training and measuring.
Absolutely. I think, look, this is speculation, but I mean, based on what we're seeing, I think that there is a kind of an assumption, especially with more senior sales leaders, that people just figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, my guys are on LinkedIn. My guys are on Twitter. They'll figure it out. They're young. They're millennials. They get this stuff. And, clearly the data suggests that people are not figuring it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, we're going to get to a slide, but I'll kind of preface it here, where I think is actually, I think one of the core challenges is the understanding of the definition of what social selling is. And I think it's a confusion issue where, as an example, you mentioned, my guys understand LinkedIn, my guys and gals understand LinkedIn or Twitter, and I think that's one of where the confusing pieces are, because they'll say, listen, we just invested 6 figures in our organization to own Sales Navigator, LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn brought in training, they helped us with Navigator, we're seeing progress here. That must mean we are social sellers. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But that's also one of the pieces in where I think there's a huge gap, is the understanding of what really is social selling. So we'll just hold that thought, everybody. And so, okay, so of course, Mike, you and I have a bias here, and that bias is around the act of enabling the team through education. But clearly the evidence is showing right here. So talk through this evidence.
Absolutely. So the evidence is undeniable that, and this is just one example, which is training, one aspect of enabling and empowering sales professionals on social. But across indicators, whether it's recent business influence by social, reps' perception of the value, reps including social in their process, across all of those indicators, you see a remarkable difference between sales professionals who say that their company does not offer training versus those that say their company does offer training. The headline is, the company support makes a big difference.
And when it comes to, I think about our own mastery program, when we're dealing on that first kickoff with leaders, we talk about buy-in and accountability, and the whole program, the whole success of social selling actually stems at the leadership level first, because if you can't help the horse get to the water and then show them how you first drink, then that they will drink, it's not going to work. And that whole buy-in piece is the leaders have to understand the value of training, but truly believe in it, not just go through the motions. So now let's get to the important piece here. We have a very similar approach to this. This is PeopleLink's approach to the maturity curve, and this is where you in the audience right now can benchmark your company against the best in the world. Explain the staircase here.
Yeah, so this is the progression that we typically see organizations go through. Everybody starts at the bottom, which is kind of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, random acts of social. You got lots of salespeople, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook, they might be on Twitter as well. But what they're doing is random, and everybody's kind of figuring it out for him or herself. Some are tweeting, some aren't, some have good LinkedIn profiles, some have bad LinkedIn profiles, some are talking about work on Facebook, others are not talking about work on Facebook. It's the Wild West, everybody's making it up. What we typically find is that at some point, somebody, usually in HR, marketing, and or legal, wakes up and says, hey, we've got to put some kind of guidelines around this so people know what to do. And that's when you get to stage 2, which is the creation of a social media policy. That's an important step. It's got to be done. But let's face it, a policy never changed sales behavior. Right? Ultimately, creating that document is a risk mitigation step, but it's not a sales performance enhancement step. It's not until you get to level 3 or stage 3, training, which is where you start to see real changes in behavior. That's when you bring in, people like organizations like a Sales for Life to train sales teams on what they should be doing, what and why. Stage 4, which is where a company like PeopleLinks really starts to come into play, is when you start integrating into the sales process. So this is really when you start saying things like, you know what, we're gonna have specific targeted guidance that's going to be tied in with our CRM, so that we're able to not only train people but also follow up and make sure in real time, in the course of doing their everyday job, that they're getting constant reinforcement, constant reminder and measurement of what they're doing on social. Kind of like what marketing automation has done for the marketing function. Yeah. And then the 5th step, optimization, which is kind of the highest level, is is really using big data to go back and say, okay, we're going to steer individual people not just to generic best practices, but to the specific actions taken at the specific times that have empirically been shown to be effective for our company, for our industry, for our customer base, etc. And that's kind of the journey. That's what we see across companies. If you think in terms of benchmarking, you can see on the right-hand side, most companies, 85% in all, are stuck somewhere in stages 1 and 2. And it's really only the remaining 15% that are broken into the zone where you start to see social selling delivering real value to the organization.
Yeah, and one of the difficult parts of random acts of social is, are they crushing their numbers because they're a rock star, or is social, because there's no baseline. There has been no baseline as to what does the average performer in our business do, and kind of moving up the needle from there. And you know, People did such a great job building this. Actually, I'm going to expand my screen so you can see it. People did such a great job of building this that, well, frankly, we just had to copy something and make it ourselves. And we couldn't come up with random acts of social. That unfortunately, Mike, you took that, so we gave it a different name. But I'm going to jump 3 levels up because you just covered level 1, level 2. But let's get to where organizations are trying to get to in 2015 is social selling. And this is the core definition, as you can see it. Social selling is made up of 3 types of selling. You'll know you're in this stage because your company has now marketing now sits at the dinner table. Like what I mean sits at the dinner table, you cannot run a social selling program without marketing. And so together, you develop what's called insights-based selling. And that is where the sales professionals are leveraging content to not only create engaging conversations, but you're measuring that engagement to drive new inbound leads. So it's selling through insights, it's selling through triggers and tools, and it's mechanized through tools like LinkedIn for job change alerts and capital raises and M&A activity. These are examples of triggers. And then finally, you have insights-based selling, or referral-based selling, which again is mechanized through tools like LinkedIn to be able to see relationships between people and roadmap those relationships. But where our organization believes the future of all of this goes well beyond social selling, and it is what is called digital selling. And there are a few companies in the world that have already developed digital selling departments. And that is where the team completely understands there's no delineation between sales and marketing. And in fact, they're just called the revenue department. And this is where digital content creators, sales development representatives, and sales executives all work in one functional business unit in the creation of content and the distribution of content and the organization of content in libraries in which they help nurture a specific customer at a very specific time in their buying journey and help them leveraging content and then measure the content consumption story of every one of those customers. And digital selling even goes beyond social. It goes offline. It's still leveraging digital assets to start conversations, or digital assets leveraged through tools like email to again shape that buyer's journey. But real digital integrators are the kind of companies where sales and marketing do not sit in different countries nor different floors. They are completely interwoven into the fabrics of the sales organization. So I just wanted to bring that forward as part of the digital transformation, and to be successful, and we're kind of elaborating on this, this is the must-have. To get even to the part where Mike was talking about his level 3 of training, social selling training, and for ours of just being a social selling organization, you need all 3 of these people at the dance. Mike, do you want to elaborate on the importance of all 3 of these people?
So completely agree, you need to have all 3. The importance of sales is obvious, especially sales leadership, as you pointed out before. They need to not only talk the talk, but also walk the walk in order to influence sales behavior, which ultimately this is all about. Marketing is critical in providing that steady flow of content, because engaging buyers on social requires having, as you put it quite rightly, insights, ideas, challenges, things that will make a buyer sit up and take notice. And it's the job of marketing to create that content and also to put in place the systems that that measure the utilization and effectiveness of that content. And then finally, sales enablement, which I kind of see as being the bridge between the two, that is constantly helping salespeople understand what the insights are and how to best use the full range of channels, social channels, email, phone, in-person meeting, etc., to deliver those insights and ideas to the buyer. So everybody's got a role to play. It's a three-legged stool. You lose one of these legs and the whole thing falls over. One of the best social selling organizations I've ever encountered is SAS out of North Carolina. And what SAS did right up front, and it was very refreshing to see, is they brought leaders from each one of these departments to the very first pre-sales meetings we ever had with that organization. And all the way through, being partners with us, and we've now been working with them for 2 years, is every one of these parties plays a pivotal role in success. So now let's get into our second last stage before we get into questions, is behavioral change and support. I want to give everybody some guidance, and please, if you're in enablement, take a screenshot of this. Take it, steal it, run with this. This is the best practice. For us, after training 300 companies, we had to learn how to do it effectively at scale and to create the best retention and adoption possible. If you want to create true behavioral change, it does not come in a workshop. It does not come with 1 or 2 classes, because you are really, social selling it's not hard, it's just different. And so for us, what we did is we understood that blended learning was the only way you're going to capture somebody's attention. People want to learn the way they want to learn it. So what we'd offer is we offer a student an ability to learn on an instructor-led call, or in a peer-to-peer study hall in a virtual environment, because not all salespeople can get together in the same place, or e-learning self-paced through video, or in one-on-one coaching calls, and all you do is you set up call times, and you can do this in your own organization. Set up a subject matter expert or one of your top sales professionals and allow a specific call time where your own team could pick their brains, ask best practices, what-if scenarios. So this learning loop, we created a learning loop because we recognized we needed to deliver a cadence over 90 days of this loop to teach people to move from zero to all of a sudden they have a social selling routine. Do you want to talk a little bit here, Mike, about some of the behavioral change mechanisms that have been very effective for your organizations or your customers? Well, the way you described it is exactly right. There's no one silver bullet, because we are talking about changing sales behavior, and that, and within that, you've got lots of different personality types and learning styles. You've got different roles. So you've got some people who are on the road. You got some people who are sitting at desks because they're doing more inside sales. You got some people who are very comfortable with social tools. Other people who are not so comfortable. So it's all about offering a kind of a broad range of learning opportunities and different modalities, so that people can kind of gravitate towards the ones that make the most sense for them and get continuous ongoing reinforcement, so that it's not just a one and done, right? Because we've all been part of that corporate training where you go in and you get trained for a day by somebody who's standing on stage and has all the answers, and and then you go back to business as usual. So what I love about that learning wheel is the way it emphasizes lots of different interaction points and continuous ongoing support, both strategic and tactical. Yeah. And the biggest lesson that we learned, and this is the tough part, and not everybody likes to hear this, is very much like the next slide. The next slide talks about the gym. The one thing that we learned was there is really no shortcut, and no matter how quote-unquote advanced you think your sales organization is, there is so much to be learned about the integration of sales and marketing and how to leverage marketing assets, when to use them, where to find them, how to measure
how to grow how to grow the conversion funnel by working as one business unit. There's so much to it that it's kind of like the gym. It takes a little bit of a routine every single day, and you need to build upon it over a period of, say, 1 quarter or 2 quarters. There is no shortcuts, and I think that kind of goes along with LinkedIn Navigator, which is one of the more powerful tools to social selling. A tool by itself is just a tool, but you need to put a mechanism around it. Now, as we're wrapping, getting close to the end of this session, now it's time to actually talk about the measurement component. Mike, dive deep into the importance of measurement and how.
So measurement of sales, whether it's activity or pipeline or outcomes or whatever, it all comes back to CRM, right?
Yeah.
Measurement is the reason why God created CRM. And that's where all the data is, that's where all the process flows are, like that's what you got to tap into. If you're not tapping into CRM, chances are you're doing, you're doing all of this with a notebook or maybe an Excel spreadsheet. So CRM is the key, and in particular there are 3 things that you want to measure. You can do it in a high-tech way or a low-tech way, but one way or another you got to measure rep activity, so who's doing things on social. Number 2, opportunity sources. So when you have an opportunity that was sourced on LinkedIn, through a Twitter exchange, even on Facebook, I mean, wherever it is, you need to be capturing the fact that that's where that opportunity source came from. And then finally, revenue influenced, either because the opportunity was sourced from social or because you have an opportunity which was sourced not through social but was influenced by social, where you know that, for example, the rep and the buyer are connected on LinkedIn, or there were interactions on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever, between them. That's kind of the last thing that you want to be able to measure is those touch points so that you can get the right sort of influence or attribution model. And again, there are high-tech ways and low-tech ways of doing this stuff. Our tool PeopleLinks is one way of doing the automatic integration, but certainly you have companies who are doing things as simple as just creating a custom field within Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics that allows them to manually show where an opportunity came from. And even that has a lot of value because you can get back to the revenue attribution piece.
Yeah, and anybody on the call in sales and marketing, this is, and even there's one field you can go even higher up in the lead sourcing. So basically, top of the funnel. This is a real opportunity for you to recognize how much of your inbound leads are actually being influenced or sourced through tools like LinkedIn and Twitter. And these are your ebook downloads, your webinar. I mean, everybody that's on this call right now, think back to how you got here. Did you come here through an email list? Did you come here through Mike or my social profile? At the end of the day, any marketing automation through UTM parameters are able to track your original sourcing. And I mean, we love the top of the funnel here, and because we're measuring all of the, I call it the digital fingerprints of everybody. I can see where you came from and what you were influenced from a content perspective. And that's a key component to social selling is, think about this at scale. You have 500, you have 1,000, you have 5,000 sales reps. You think of the horsepower of these people influencing and providing insights out in the market, which all of your blogs and ebooks have calls to action, which again are all being measured in your marketing automation, which is connected to your CRM. You start creating a massive force coming through the top of the funnel. So, and I'd love to know some of the empirical evidence that you're seeing, Mike. I'll just give you everybody in the audience, just as we're wrapping up, some anecdotal evidence here. For every dollar that we're seeing customers spend in both people, process, and technology around social selling, and that includes the cost of training. The throughput in real dollars is they're yielding $5 for every dollar they spend within 6 months. Because just think of the scale, and it doesn't take very long for a sales professional. Just everybody think through what is the average customer lifetime value of one deal from the company that you work at in the audience here. and you think of one deal sourced by social, and then you think of 2, and then 3, and then 4, it doesn't take very long to add up to becoming not only revenue neutral, but becoming such a profit center. What are some of the results that you guys are seeing? Mike?
Yeah, so similar numbers. We're seeing pretty massive results, again, where the investment, the I in ROI is quite low and the return is quite high. So I mean, we've got, literally we have examples of like one large financial services company that sourced a $650 million RFP literally because of a renewed contact through actions that a rep took on LinkedIn. I mean, it was literally that simple, but it was where they took some action that basically caused an old contact, someone they hadn't been in touch with in a couple of years, to reach out and say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn, we've got this RFP out on the street and you guys aren't participating. You should really be in it.
Wow.
within 2 days, they were responding to a $650 million RFP. And we've got examples of that all over the place. So, there's no question this stuff works. The I is small, the R is big.
Yeah, and the I actually, for a lot of organizations, the I is more around time investment.
Yes.
And I just want to put everybody, set the right tone here. There is no silver bullet. And from an ecosystem, from a real social selling organization, the heaviest lifting we're finding actually has to happen at the marketing level, because marketing many times has not created a resource library for sales to use. That content is very bottom of the funnel focused. It's very case study focused rather than thought leadership, insights, and research. So there's a lot of heavy lifting in the creation of content that is valuable for social selling at the top of the funnel. But that's not expensive. It's just time consuming. But once you get those pieces in place, think of the distribution horsepower that your sales organization has. So now, Mike, we're kind of getting to the wrap-up section. I'm going to open up for Q&A for a few minutes, and let's just let me just see here what we have for questions. Okay, so let's see here. Glenn has asked us a question. What would be the single most strategic skill to train people to attain in order to be most effective in a social selling environment? So if you were to pinpoint a strategic skill, what would you pinpoint it at?
I would probably pinpoint it at listening.
Okay.
So how do you listen to your buyers in the market on social in order to identify opportunities to engage?
Okay. I would say it's around educate. So if the statistics hold true that 74% of buyers choose those that provide value and insights first, part of my daily routine, my phone sits beside my nightstand where I sleep. I wake up every morning at 5:30 in the morning, and it's my job to think of how I can help and educate a particular customer or a set of customers or my entire social network every single day understand the market that I'm interested in, which is social selling. For you, it's your world, but I am constantly thinking of how to better serve other people through education. So everybody, right now, this is your opportunity. If you could put in the chat box or the question box in your go-to meeting at the bottom, type in a question. I'll keep reading them off, and we'll just start answering them. Another question from Nikki was, you mentioned and referenced 4 times more likely to open more doors. Where can you restate that reference? It's actually from Sales Benchmark Index. It's 4.2 times more likely to open up an opportunity due to a personal reference than to find something cold. Another question, Walter is asking, the statistics that you're talking about, are they US-based only? And I can tell you that depending on which statistic, because we've kind of fired off a lot of them here, some of them are done by third-party research firms that I know have been on global scale. Mike, any kind of insights as to some of the data that your team did yourselves?
Yeah, so our research data, all the stuff about the use of social selling and the impact of company support on social selling, That is all data based on an extensive survey we did that was U.S. only, and only B2B salespeople.
Okay, fantastic. Team, a couple more questions. Let's see them come into the system here. Dan is asking a question here. For a brand newbie to this, where is the best place to start? LinkedIn profile, or should I dive into generating some content to be shared? So Dan, I'll answer that in a two-part question. The first piece, as long as you've done this, is actually a mindset shift. To recognize that your social profile, you need to start treating your own self as a micro brand, but think of yourself as a digital newspaper. Think of how a newspaper grows. It grows through subscribers. So if you have the mindset that you are willing to add people into your network, because then you have more people that you influence through content, that content then is liked, commented, and shared upon, passed onto their social networks, which make up many times more of your potential buyers, your ideal customer profile. And then the loop is that they then add you into their network, and it becomes a growing machine. As long as you've overcome that mentality of the mindset shift of treating your network like a digital newspaper, then I would then second that with your profile as part of that brand is the second piece that you need to address. Mike, any thoughts on your order of operations on if you were brand new to this?
I always like to tell people to start with the profile. I think that it's so sort of foundational and fundamental, and if you have, even if you're sharing great content and putting great stuff out there, if ultimately you're steering people back to a profile that is uninspiring, not helpful, incomplete, self-promoting, then it's a little bit of a sad trombone experience where people are like, oh, this is great stuff, who's sharing it? Wah, wah.
Yeah.
So I'd say start with the profile.
Okay. So this is an interesting question, and I have kind of a piece to this. So Glenn has asked, after LinkedIn, what do you see as the most effective social media platform for social selling for architectural, engineering, construction, professional services, which has very long sales cycles? And I would preface it, Glenn, I know that we're about to start a project with one of the larger construction data companies in the world, and LinkedIn is going to be the primary source because it's been evaluated that that buyer is engaged on LinkedIn. I've always loved the way that Joe Rowley sets the tone for this. Do an evaluation of where your buyer learns. Where does your buyer hang out? If your buyer does not hang out on Twitter, nor Google+, which has kind of gone away like a dodo bird, then that is not an effective medium to be spending your time. It might be to be working with the influencers of the construction, like the analysts and the influencers of the construction data industry. But if the end user is not there, and you find that the end user is really somebody that is more engaged over the telephone or email, then those are the mediums you need to focus on. But where social plays a part is allowing you to find insightful, educational ideas, best practices, data that you can leverage in a phone conversation. So at the end of the day, do not waste your time on mediums that are not yielding the people in them every single day. But social still plays a huge part in self-education and in being able to use those insights in something like a phone or an email conversation. Mike, any kind of further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I'll just give you some data from our own professional services clients, of which we have quite a few. What they are doing fairly consistently is they're using LinkedIn heavily to showcase the expertise of their staff, in particular their partners, because that's often what a prospect or client is looking at when they're evaluating a firm. They're looking at the credentials of the people who they'll be working with. So LinkedIn, typically indispensable from a professional branding standpoint. From a thought leadership standpoint, what most of our professional services firm clients are telling us is Twitter's a much better place to distribute their thought leadership. So if you're doing a lot of publishing, you want to draw attention to the great thought leadership that you're putting out, chances are Twitter's going to be a more effective platform than LinkedIn for doing that piece.
Yeah. And just as a side note, for anybody that sells to engineering, and it depends the type of engineering. The one mentioned here is civil engineering, but for a lot of IT professionals, I'm finding a lot of value in a tool called Quora. As an example, I follow Jason Lipkin, who's a venture capitalist, who's constantly on Quora teaching CEOs like myself to think around business ownership and venture capitalism. It's a Q&A. All it is a Q&A tool. But I want to get to a couple of the other questions. Sonia has asked, can you reinstate what sales enablement versus sales and marketing are involved in? And I'll bring this to you. We call it the Three Amigos. And I called it the Three Amigos when I met SAS, when I met, like when you meet Christine Vick and Jennifer Hill and the team there, like they are just, the way that they approach it is incredible. Here's the roles between the three. Sales, your role is to create accountability and action from the sales force. Because no matter what enablement feels, and this is my perception after training 300 companies, that enablement can't force a sales professional to do work or learn or create action because the rep doesn't report to enablement. The rep reports to the sales leader. So that's the sales leader's job. Get the horse to drink the water. The marketer creates the machine. The marketer creates the, they make sure that everybody is aligned to the buyer's journey. They are creating content that fuels that buyer's journey in the why, how, and who categories, like top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. They're then putting content in an easy-to-use library, and then from there, they're teaching everybody how a conversion funnel works. Like when you share a blog and people click on the blog and download the ebook, where does the lead go? There's an SLA, between a service level agreement, between marketing passing the lead to sales. What happens with it? So it's like the whole mechanism behind the scenes. And then enablement takes your current sales process and current sales methodology and says, okay, where are the gaps? Well, 57% of the buying journey is happening before the proposal stage, and we've been spending a lot of time on teaching you how to master the proposal stage. So we're going to interweave new education and new best practices earlier on in the funnel. And so enablement is thinking of the education of you, the sales professional, on how they can better that. So those are the three roles and how they get involved. Mike, any kind of thought as to where this all kind of fits in the machine?
I think that's a great description. The only thing that I would add to it is a lot of companies don't have a formal sales enablement role. I think the last statistic I saw was only around 30, I want to say 30 to 35%, don't quote me on that, of companies have formal sales enablement functions, and they tend to be the larger ones. So often that role ends up getting played by somebody who,
by the leader.
Often by the sales leaders, sometimes by somebody in marketing, especially product marketing. So don't get too hung up on the titles, I would say. It's more a question of the, making sure that you've got the activities covered, regardless of whether or not somebody has sales enablement in their title.
Yeah. And the last question I'll wrap up, and actually this is from Bob. This is a great one because HubSpot wrote an incredible blog on this a couple weeks ago, and I'll find it for Bob. And then it just triggered, I want to create a piece of content for Bob for this, and it is, what percentage of content created should be product and solution focused versus education? So in fact, there's empirical, so every company is different, but I'll give you what we do as an example from a measurement standpoint. And we took a lot of these insights from HubSpot. So not only have we created three categories, okay, so top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. We've also, what we do is this. We ask ourselves every single objection or question a buyer has at every single stage. I mean, as minute as the question might be. And one by one, in our content calendar, we make sure we answer every one of those questions with a type of content. It might be a video, an ebook, an infographic, what have you. Now, if you're thinking of the inner mix, there's a wheel chart by HubSpot that will show you a percentage mix that needs to be created that are, as you just described, which is educational, which is research-based. So what we do is every day, we blog 7 days a week, 365. every day has a theme, and each day has a theme. And as an example, I think like Tuesdays is data, Thursdays might be thought-provoking top of the funnel. So I'll get you that data. I believe if you looked at our mix, it's only one of the 7 days is kind of product and solution, kind of moving people towards webinars, as an example, like this. And the other 6 days are concentrating more at the top of the funnel to early stage, middle of the funnel, because that's the reality of the blog reader. The reality is if you're deeper into our buying journey, you're into hardcore assets. You're into this webinar, or you are actually deep into our vault around ebooks. So the blogs are centric around top to early middle of the funnel, but the percentage mix, I think, for us is something like 15%, so 1 day a week. But Bob, if you email me at jamie@salesforlife.com, I'll actually get you that HubSpot article. It will break it down in like scientific data over 2 years of history of HubSpot on how they measured all that. So everybody, I think we're getting to the top of the hour, so I appreciate everybody's questions. Let's wrap up. Mike, thank you so much for your participation. I hope that everybody in the crowd got a lot of value out of this, and really looking forward to the next time, Mike. I'm sure we'll be doing this again.
Terrific. I look forward to it. Jamie, thank you for having me on the webinar as well, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks a lot. You take care.